When I talk about conflicts, I always emphasize that by conflict I understand the clash of emotions. That is, the man confronts, realizes, meets, or suddenly sees that he was in a situation which he considers unacceptable. This means that it cannot work with it, it is unacceptable for him. I do not want to bear it, does not fit it. Would like to be different. And feel that in such a case leave cannot be. That is why conflict is a conflict that man considers the matter to be unacceptable and unbearable. Conflict does not exist for itself, always has a specific cause, so-called emotional mental content. This emotional content determines which of the neurotransmitters in the brain will remain. He is disabled, and consequently what changes in the organs he will cause. I have noticed that the meaning of the word conflict is not obvious for most people. People associate it with international conflicts, political conflicts or others. In new medicine, what is interesting, conflict or biological conflict? This differs from the earlier mentioned that he is individually experiencing emotional shocks. I cannot accept anything. I cannot live with something. The situation is unbearable for me. How does the conflict come about? Man is living the norm, decides on various matters based on value system, and suddenly collide with reality which, as it turns out, looks different from his expectations. In addition, a conflict that is a biological conflict is a life-threatening obstacle. This means that any conflict can be a biological conflict, as a result of which man cannot in a normal way, and begins to feel restrained, impaired or completely vetted. For example, a man would like to live with honest money. He would like not so much to make a huge fortune. 30. What to earn so that children have what to eat, to be able to pay bills and other monthly expenses, and to have what to go for a 2-week vacation. And suddenly he cannot keep up. So when a man faces a life obstacle, this is a biological conflict that is unacceptable from its point of view. And since we are talking about a biological conflict of the premises I will say in a moment, this will result in individual changes in the body the person affected. So the biological conflict is different from other conflicts, intellectual, psychiatric, etc. It provokes immediate physical symptoms. The limbs become chilled. Compulsive thinking is involved. And what is probably the easiest noticeable symptom? Man is not able to fall asleep earlier than between the 2nd and the 3rd at night. I was also going through a biological conflict, and I laughed out of bed in the evening. It cannot be true that by failing to cope with a certain topic I cannot knock him out of his head. Already 3:30 and I still do not sleep. Man knows these symptoms, and when he sees them at home, it begins to seek as quickly as possible a way to resolve a conflict that will bring relief. In this way it does not pay attention to the conflicting change, and no major change will occur. New medicine is not about getting rid of conflicts once and for all. Of course they will occur because they are the factors accompanying life, are its inherent part. We can say that without conflict there is no possible development. Conflict initiates development. Conflict gives you the opportunity to develop. If we can use it, that means we can solve it. Conflict is not for us to stay in it for years or even decades, and complain that we were unhappy sitting on the shit in the shit. The conflict is so we can solve it when confronted with a situation that is unbearable for him. He should be able to deal with her in real life. What is biological conflict? New medicine precisely determines this process, describing specifically what psychological trauma causes a particular disease. It describes exactly what biological conflict is, as well as the conditions that must be fulfilled in order for it to happen. What conditions must be met for launching a specific biological program? The first is that the subject of the conflict is a personal drama. We take it very seriously. In this way, I immediately betrayed that a conflict situation that we do not take seriously will not cause a biological conflict. Or if a man is able to despise it, it will not change it. The content of the conflict then is dramatic if it acts depressingly on us, overwhelms us, disturbs us, irritates us, disturbs us. It triggers a continuous state of excitement, anxiety, nervousness. Is a shocking event for us. As a result, the person surviving, feeling afflicted by conflict, he should be responsible for him. In addition, he believes that no one alone can solve the problem. I could say that the victim of the conflict takes on his subject what makes him think of him as his personal failure, and it causes much more stress than if it were treated as a social problem. The second premise of biological conflict: its unpredictability. Only such a conflict will bring us changes that we do not expect, which falls on us suddenly. This means that man is living the norm, until suddenly something happens. Something you did not expect. My God, I did not expect it at all. I did not think they would throw me out of work. I did not expect the world crisis. I did not think that marriage could last forever. Man suddenly has to face with the fact that reality is different from his imagination. Mother Nature therefore included the option of surprise to force us to stop for a moment and take a look at reality, in order not to remain in the sphere of dreams, so that we do not make unreal, but to keep in touch with reality. For example, if I see that my company slows people down, I should not have to convince myself that it will not happen to me just because I go to work on a daily basis until the 10th. And lately my supervisor has been so nice talking to me, so I will not throw it out. This is not realistic thinking. If a person is able to let go of one thought, since half of the companies were on the cobblestones, and the business does not go well, it is to be expected that they will throw me out. For that, let us suppose that man will begin to look at various possibilities. It's not about getting too exaggerated, but to stick to the facts. They show that he can also be kicked out. That is also the case. Certainly man is wrong with this. However, because he expected it, it will not change it. So Mother Nature is waiting for us. Let us stand hard on the ground and think realistically. Because if we think sober, there are very few cases that can surprise us. Greater than the third criterion determining the biological conflict, he is that it is an obstacle. By experiencing it, I confront something or someone. I collide with something and try to change it, otherwise it's done, but I fail. Another good word is the word crisis. For both in the event of a conflict and in a crisis situation, or man cannot decide which of several solutions should he choose. And because of this he experiences a dilemma, hesitates, is embarrassed, does not know what to do. Or on the contrary, there is no possibility of reacting in a conflict situation. It comes down to the fact that the conflict in this connection lasts longer. The mechanism of conflict, which I used to call the anatomy of conflict, works in a simple way. Man walking through life moves in a certain direction. Suddenly she encounters a wall on her way and collides with her. With this person I cannot live together anymore because what I learned about her is unacceptable to me. Conflict ready. Or at work we learn that we doubled our duties and at the same time halved the salary. And again the conflict is ready. After all this is unacceptable. I could continue to exchange conflict situations, but it is about them. We are confronted with something. And when I start to push against the wall, what wall force will it work on me? Of course with the way I push it. That is why it is an abortive idea to talk to a cancer patient with a man fight the conflict. Fight disease. Of course the more you fight the faster you'll be able to beat and the faster you'll finish. Do not fight but solve conflicts. Or if I cannot move in any direction I should stop. Turn around and move on in another direction where there is no obstacle. For example, find a person with whom we will live together well. Job, occupation or ugly speaking profession which a man with joy, pleasure and in a good mood can perform, which does not conflict with him. So with conflicts we can handle this way. We solve them in the order they appear. No conflict is possible without development. It is important to realize that both biological conflict and conflict generally understood. It is not in itself neither good nor bad. Determination of good or evil is infinitely superficial. Conflict is a development opportunity. If however a man slows down in time, he is withdrawn or simply is not interested in the resolution of the conflict. This means that it will remain at the current level and will not be able to develop further. Then he is happy because he will really be lucky if he survives the biological conflict at all. I could say that on the path of natural selection whoever is not willing to develop the same will be annihilated. Unfortunately the fact is that only one who is willing to know the meaning, work, understand the origin of your conflicts, find out what went wrong, what would have to do differently where he made a mistake, what should he do from today to make the situation not repeat itself. He will be able to resolve his conflicts and more seriously not get sick. The slight changes will of course occur, but that is not the point for us to close in the golden cage. In solving the conflict he does not think that wearing a monk's attire he will sleep in the Tibetan mountains, so high that the road to get there takes 2 weeks. Then shut up in the monastery where we are certainly not in danger. And in this way we will not be caught by any conflict, so we will not get seriously ill. This is not life. Mother Nature expects us to live normally. They integrate with the environment. They were sensitive to external stimuli, and they actually reacted to them. Or intelligently they solved their conflicts. What does it mean in an intelligent way? It would be interesting to explain since I'm talking about it. What is intelligence? Intelligence we cannot simply call the result of the IQ test which someone will solve because it is only a digit. This is only a digit that does not reflect true human intelligence. Intelligence, communication or emotional I could enumerate so long. Intelligence is the ability to recognize conflict, work out a solution, then to implement it. So it's just that I recognized the conflict, it does not mean intelligence. The fact that I'm headed for his solution, I'm looking for ways, it's still not intelligent yet. We can only talk about intelligence when a man finds a solution to the conflict. He can deal with the overwhelming, disappointing, depressing, annoying situation. After that, happy life begins. So the biological conflict is a development opportunity. We should understand that if there were no conflicts in biology, we could not talk about the development of individuals or species. Mother Nature's conflicts have always served to match the surrounding environment, physical parameters and functions of the living beings' bodies. The same is true of people today. Because we fall into a huge amount of conflicts. Our systems are collapsing, in turn the healthcare system, the financial system, the justice system. In turn they announce bankruptcy because none of them solve the problems to which they were created. Tlumaks. Wilich tlumaks preskrutzonomexi malnalichsbes nakau / Zn. Zaduzo makes. Stanasid nemezi akzimezi aspire kmisi, ales nam tespsi padkios obktor ponadrok eopuli z pow what conflict to, IWs we as kuz time y walu si eb bards zo kai izgi pow as what does it mean? The fact that a person has to understand what is going on around him and work out an individual solution that will then implement. We ought to take care of our legal security. Be well versed enough to be able to act as your own lawyer. A man should be aware of the changes that take place in him. Know how the disease progresses. Because no one is able to frighten us, just as no one can comfort us. It depends only on us, only in our hands is our health going. All conflicts are possibilities for development. If a man pulls a card and writes his present on it, conflicts then determine which one is able to solve. It will make his life become fuller, more beautiful, richer and happier. In addition, it will repair its relationship. People are sick, disabled, do not cope and run just for one reason. They are not willing to solve their conflicts. The fourth prerequisite for the occurrence of biological conflict is his experience in solitude. Living in solitude means that I do not talk to other people about the topic of conflict. I keep it in myself, because I'm ashamed of myself, or I'm afraid I will not be laughed at, so that the guns of God did not find out that I also have feelings, or do not use this information against me. So man feels left alone with his conflict. He thinks it's his problem and there is no one to whom he could turn to for help. He stayed alone. Cannot anyone ask for help? Because they either do not know how to help or they end up putting even more danger of betraying details about themselves. It is alleged that the man will tell the case. But what survived behaved for itself. That his stomach was clenched, that he had a torsion and diarrhea. The world was on its head, that he was still thinking only about debt, credit, his 3 children, which he must feed. That it's nothing if you're pretty thin because you lost your job, important only to the children. So we feel alone in this problem. If even a conflict is not solved by self-talk about someone. Imagine I lived it this way, it happens to me, and that yes, I feel terrible about it, I'm so uncomfortable with it. If sharing the problem alone does not solve it, because very rarely it happens that the conversation itself so soothing that the conflict is resolved into % of cases, no. We should talk about our conflicts anyway. So find the right people we can trust and say, you imagine this and that. Then we can open up to them. Dress up the problem in words, formulate your feelings, because if you do not do it, it will remain in you like a storm cloud which goes away and shoots lightning, allowing you to survive a particular change program. It may even have the final consequences if such a conflict happens to us. The fifth premise, and in total is the 5 premises of the biological change-inducing conflict, is that we cannot find a solution temporarily temporarily. The man will fall into conflict and then be in a situation for 1 day, 3 days, week, 14 days, month, 3 months, 5 months. But I also know cases of people who have suffered more than a year of conflict, and consequently it causes very heavy and serious changes in the country. The degree of gravity of change, so their number and kind, and the speed of their formation. It depends on the duration and intensity of the conflict. If a person knows how much he has fallen into a conflict, for example that he was in an extremely depressed mood, he felt like a messed up head. Walking down the street he did not even know where he was. Then he knows that this was a very serious conflict, after which the convalescence period would be far off. So both periods last as long and are equally intense. However, during the period of conflict a person may notice that he is passing through this period. I will briefly mention the most evident symptoms: cold limbs, unable to warm hands and legs. Compulsive thinking, autopilot comes on in the head which sets itself on conflict. We think and seek conflict resolution, but unknowingly. If anyone sees that his thoughts are unintentionally headed one way, then I would like to get his attention. Although it is not certain that all 5 premises have occurred and that there has been a change. But compulsive thinking is one of the most obvious manifestations of the existence of biological conflict. The obstacle of life when a man is not able to live peacefully, continue to live in peace because someone harms him, bother him, terrorize him, or was shocked, suffered an accident, is near died, and cannot deal with it all. One thing is important: any biological conflict we would have. They did not speak, it triggers the symptoms immediately noticeable. And if all conditions are fulfilled, so traumatic sudden speech, form of collision, separation and lack of solution. Even if the matter is a bit of a nuisance, a special program will be launched, so that Mother Nature will launch a program of adaptation formerly called cancer. Or cancer does not depend on the intensity of the conflict, but if there are adequate premises. The only difference is that if someone changes just because of fear, this will be the laryngitis. Slight 1-2 weeks. However, after a month, conflict caused by the diagnosis, after which the patient began to fear death because he was told he had cancer and died. And for months this fear was maintained. In this patient also for months will continue to leave the disease. What will be diagnosed no longer is laryngospasm but larynx cancer, just because it has a heavier and longer course. No less mechanical, and tissue is the same. The biological conflict comes from an unmet need. In cases where there is a conflict with someone, what biological need is that? What did not happen? What the victim of the conflict did not get? What a disappointment! Or without what cannot imagine a further life. Because each conflict is different and arises in different circumstances. Other circumstances cause it. Therefore there are no 2 conflicts. And therefore there is no template solution. Everybody has to find their own solution to their conflict, which consists in satisfying his specific need. For example, when someone is short of money and has 3 children and is worried about eating for them, it may also be possible to hire an additional hire shop for luggage, or to unload wagons, and thus solve the problem of maintenance concern. Speaking of conflict solutions, conflicts are resolved in real life as well as at psychic level. We are always looking for solutions to real conflicts in real life, because then we will not have to think often. Do you think that it is not worth to dump things that we have no influence on? So if in real life we manage to eliminate the circumstances and the causes of the conflict, Then as a consequence we will calm down and we will cease to be forced to continue to deal with its consequences. If conflict is not solvable in real life, for example when someone died a beloved loved one, or lost someone or something forever, and you cannot reverse this undo, then there is no other solution than accepting the situation and further life. And most importantly, do not panic. No matter how far back we look at the history of Earth physiology and development, Mother Nature has always been just such conflicts in the way of living beings. Which could solve them? Mankind is today faced with a global collapse. In a global situation, not information revolution but intellectual revolution. Man in spiritual sense passes through a certain process of life. And no matter how you look at it, of course we will not grow a third eye or hand. However, we are dealing with a continuous evolutionary process. Man must realize that only then will he know inner peace and surround himself with order around. If he takes responsibility for matters that concern him. If he entrusts them to someone else, then it can only be a problem. It can be seen that such behavior is causing problems. So let's take care of conflict resolution. Let's unravel our conflicts. Let's understand them. Let's find out why a problem is a problem for us. Let's see what biological need is behind it. Experience in the sense of living being, true being, understood belonging or interpersonal relationships. Let us take care of this need. When this happens, then the conflict becomes unfounded. And even if there is a malignant lesion or cancerous lesion, from tonsillitis to rectal cancer, of any possibility we would not say we can get rid of it quickly, if we deal with the conflict quickly. At the same time, so the repair period, tumor breakdown or reconstruction of tissue defects. So it is important for us to know the reason and purpose of the conflict. What is the difference like adapting to the changing environment of the surrounding environment? While evolution from a single-celled animal has led us to the present shape, on our way of life we have encountered and survived 1 billion conflicts. It is thanks to them that today we have such other hands and feet or eyes. That's why we have eyebrows, jaw, arms and legs. And there is a buried dog in the way that most humanity approaches its conflicts. Do people solve their problems by giving each other a helping hand? Do they throw away what they psychologically suffer? Do they come to each other with love? Can they leave themselves slowly dying because of their conflicts? That is the question. Either we die of our conflicts or we will find ourselves struggling to solve them. If we want to solve them and order our lives, in the end we will be able to live peacefully. We will not have to worry about the future. We will be able to order our lives not for 4 or 10 years, but forever, for the entire period, provided we take responsibility for them. The consequences of biological conflicts are not only cancerous lesions or cancerous lesions. Small delicate conflicts bring about similar changes, one can say, in a small way. These types of changes include, for example, herpes, which is neither a severe nor a life-threatening change. Still, its epithelial mechanics are the same as those of any part of the body. But what happens in the case of herpes? We talk about conflict when someone misses someone's kisses. And suddenly he realizes that he really wants to, but he cannot kiss anyone. Because this person is not with him, it would be so good to express his love without any other words or gestures. Another conflict that causes herpes also very slight. It's such that when we're scared that we've drunk somebody's glasses, we're scared we'll get rashes. Fear alone is already a trigger for conflict. When we get upset that we also got somebody's glasses before we got a swollen mouth. To do just that again did not happen because so I do not suffer herpes. This is precisely the activation of the conflict. If a man behaves in this way, he will surely have herpes, and if not, he will not have it. Herpes does not appear from kissing, missing, or through the glass, but because of misunderstood reason and erroneous beliefs. Man falls into conflict. Let's look at the cold for example. With the cold we are talking about rhinitis. Causes them I do not cause conflict. Conflict, something stinks here. Conflict, premonition of something. I feel something and I'm afraid I would rather not want it, I would not want it to happen. This emotional charge causes nasal mucosal ulceration. Our bad luck with this special program is physiological. As long as the epithelium ulcer, in the active conflict period, it becomes less sensitive than usual. So we do not notice that the mucous membrane ulcer. This conflict will last a day, 2 or a week. Because of some trouble at work, who we have perceived and feared its consequences. We were afraid of any further trouble, we did not want to get involved. We did not want to measure it, we were afraid, we did not want it. There was an ulcer. However, the problem at work disappears, it comes out that it is different than we feared it. And it's time to relax. Then hypersensitivity occurs. The convalescence period of 1 week of conflict activity is 1 week. The man then may think that since last week in Monday started conflict and lasted until Monday. And just now he was on a Monday. This condition will persist for a week, but later the special program will end and the ailment will disappear as the hand takes off and nothing else will happen. This can be controlled. In conclusion, a minor conflict can trigger a minor change. And if I may ask, rather based on such minor conflicts, let us validate the existence of new medicine. Do not wait until someone grows a cauliflower-sized tumor, because its distribution will take much longer. So if one is intelligent, wise and predictable, it will draw conclusions from current or past conflicts and illnesses. And he will check whether what new medicine declines. If there is a recurrence of a conflict, of course the symptoms will be renewed. For example, a person 10 years ago. When it comes to the cold, the weather is spoiled, or when the frost comes and the weather is bad. It is then she, after the arrival of this bad weather, always feeling flu symptoms, rhinitis, clogged nose and ears tearing. As a result, there will be a misconception in this person. False information. That is why it is cold, because it is cold outside. That's not true. In fact, the premonitions associated with the coming worsening weather causes symptoms that people misinterpret. This total misunderstanding is due to one cause. That in the former medicine did not take into account the diaper age of diseases. So that the first program starts, and when the conflict is resolved, the deletion begins. Changes must therefore be removed because they are no longer valid. Shocked like a tumor that naturally decomposes. And if the mucous membrane of the nasal mucosa is ulcerated or has become atrophy, becoming thinner, so that through the nose they can get rid of what bothered us, from which we feel bad, then repaired, it will be through cell multiplication. Since I also mentioned cancer and cancerous lesions, I would like to point out that there is nothing else but cancer or a cancerous change. There is nothing else. The variables are only the intensity of the conflict and the way the disease progresses, whether it is severe or mild. So if we talk about a specific nose mucosal program, for example, example, if someone has rhinitis that is during the lasting rhinitis he performed a mucosal biopsy. This biopsy would undoubtedly demonstrate epithelial cell hypertrophy. That is the multiplication of epithelial cells. Do not commission this type of research with influenza or rhinitis is due to ignorance of the whole process. Missing relevant knowledge. It is even better because otherwise tomorrow would start to frighten people who have had cancer. Because such would be the consequence of disseminating this knowledge. Also, it would be a paradox if it were possible to scare people. But even in the case of such a small, delicate, flat and essentially nothing significant change, the same is true, and the same is true of the course of the conflict and its determinants. Therefore, when we notice a runny nose, ask the person, please tell me what you did not like. What did you smell? What bad feelings you had? What did you confront, or why did you fall into conflict? What made you feel rejected, pushed back? And then you should listen to the story of the life of the victim of the conflict. Just a little bit about the flu. If a person learns what causes the flu, so you will see what kind of conflicts went before the flu symptoms. For example, the most common reason is I do not like the conflict. I do not like this cold weather, I just cannot catch a cold. I should not have been in the cold, so it is a premonition of the cold. So if a man becomes aware that he was afraid of the cold because he thought it was the change, and since change is an obstacle in everyday life that prevents normal activities from living, if man becomes aware and stops fearing because he knows that it does not cause change, maybe even in December go out and play with snowballs dressed only in a shirt. And even after half an hour do not catch a cold. For if there is no conflict, change is not needed. If a person tries to check again the shirt to play in the snow but still a little afraid, this can occur with her sensitive rhinitis. But if she realizes that it all depends on her, and will not have bad forebodings about the cold even if it froze on the bone, there will be no flu symptoms. It will remain. So the point of gaining knowledge is the ability to realize what overwhelms my psyche, what I really fear, and getting rid of the cause of fear, having understood the situation, out of the wrong circle, which may have poisoned our lives for 10 years now. I mean all this together: headache, runny, tearing, malaise, nausea. So what is associated with the period of convalescence during which we undergo flu? About fever and muscle aches, not to mention. So the topic of conflicts is not complicated. Just do not dramatically dramatize or mystify this problem. We must acknowledge that no one but us can solve our conflicts. And understand it. I apologize in advance, but I will say straight away: who is not willing to solve conflicts, he will surely die. Let's finish this.